and Taylor Dahl.
This is Helmets and Heels
On 1010XL, switched on by First Coast Lighting and Fans. Upscale lighting, fans, and home decor.
Show me what you got, pretty lady.
Does it feel like a Friday to any of you out there in Heeligan Nation?
It definitely does for me, Mia.
Taylor Dahl may or may not have almost posted the Feel Good Friday graphic on the 1010XL social channels. That's how feeling good we are on this Hump Day Wednesday. Of course, 4th of July tomorrow. So many of us, including here at the Superstation, will be celebrating the holiday and will be off. Hopefully you will all enjoy it as well and stay safe. And thank you to those who do have to work tomorrow. This is Helmets and Heels right here on 1010XL 92.5 FM. Lauren Brooks, RJ Saunders, both off this week. Mia O'Brien, Taylor Dahl, and Dylan Denmark holding down the fort here at the Superstation on this fine Feel Good Wednesday. Let's call it a Feel Good Wednesday, Taylor. Well, I know we're feeling good about the Jacksonville Jaguars prospects heading into the 2024 season. I don't think we speak for not only much of Duval, but much of the national listening audience, including some of our friends with the national outlet that we've had the chance to work with in Bootleg Football, Taylor. They released their Jaguars episode last week while I was on vacation. We haven't gotten a chance to react to it. And so that's what we're going to do to begin today's program, kind of reacting to some of the highlights from that episode with EJ Snyder and Brett Coleman, which is available on the Bootleg Football YouTube channel. Got to give them a plug as a big reason why we have really overhauled a lot of our multimedia efforts. We have this beautiful fancy camera that for those of you watching on the MyBookie digital live studio right now, you get to see us through. A lot of that was recommendations from those two gentlemen. And so we appreciate their help on the back end here at 1010XL. Not sure Jaguar fans will really appreciate some of the analysis, let's say. Some of the predictions. I know the highlight of which was that they both felt that the additions and the subtractions from last year's roster for the Jacksonville Jaguars basically leave the Jaguars in that same 8 to 10 win window that they have sat in for the last 2 years.
Yeah, and to preface, they use the word weird a lot. The Jaguars team is weird because they go on, and we'll listen to a couple clips that are a little more descriptive on why they feel that way about certain aspects of the roster. And this is them kind of recapping last year of what happened last year. And so it is a lot based on that, but they do go into the offseason changes and things like that. But they use that word weird because, and it's the same thing that I feel like I have said a ton, and I said all last season, so I was honestly kind of glad listening to this because I was like, okay, I was not alone, and thinking that there were moments even in that 8-3 time where I was like, this football team is so inconsistent, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And I could probably go find clips last year on Helmets and Heels being like, I don't know what it is. I don't feel like they're complete. I can't figure out what's missing because it's not one thing. Every week it was something different that was causing them to barely win a game. A couple balls bounced their ways to get them to that 8-3 mark. Certain games Trevor just absolutely looked phenomenal. Certain games Trevor didn't at all. Certain games the offense looked like they were flowing really well for one half, and then they would die the second half, or it'd be vice versa. Certain games, the defense in the first half of the season looked like, okay, this could be a top defense. This could be a top secondary. And then in the second half, it all collapsed. So it was, I think the best word to say is weird. And so for the way that they were saying that, they also did give props to certain areas and also mentioned, Trevor's injury and other things like that factored. So they weren't oblivious to the other things that were going on the roster of what potentially might have led to some of the issues last year. But these two guys, they pretty much all they do is watch film. So they go through, they study film from all over the league. Right now, around this time, they're covering every team. So they'll do an episode on every team in the league, and this happened to be the Jags week. And so it was interesting to me, though, because they really went into depth on some things that I think could bring up some really good conversations for us here in Jacksonville.
And yes, as 264 points out, we will give you the disclaimer that was noted to me in my own household as I was listening to this podcast episode. Brett is indeed a Texans fan, and has a Texans sweatshirt on in said video, and he gives that disclaimer off the top. So you could certainly put that out there. He also has been a defender of Trevor. Yeah. And he's put out, analysis videos describing where Trevor has had success over his 3 years in the NFL and where his shortcomings have come from. And so as we begin this discussion, again, the disclaimer, yes, he's a Texans fan. Yeah. Sure, put that out there.
He mentioned that he also is one of the guys that can separate that. And he mentioned in the podcast how many Jags fans have reached out to him asking what certain issues are, and he went back and watched a lot of Trevor film and watched a lot of Jags, and in very much depth has tried to figure out where the issues have lied.
Because he likes Trevor. And
Yes.
so that's where we're going to kind of start this. And I think it's important, as obviously the dead period, the dry season, as many call the 6-week stretch in the National Football League rolls on. I think it is important to hear what other regions of the country are saying about your Jacksonville Jaguars, what some of these national analysts that study the entire league are seeing in terms of trends and in terms of numbers. And so with that said, let's begin with the wide receiver room, Taylor Dahl, and we'll begin with the conversation that Brett and EJ had regarding who will be the Jaguars' leading receiver in 2024. Now, we're going to listen to the clip, and then we're going to get to today's question of the day, because it will also lead us to a conversation surrounding Evan Ingram and what his usage should look like in 2024.
Junior and the routes he ran and the routes they run in this offense, he has a chance to be one of those rookie receivers who, I'm not going to say overachieves, who doesn't have that, well, look, it's his rookie year, he was only supposed to get 400 yards. I think Brian Thomas Jr. can do better than that. And I think if that connection with Trevor happens early and he starts to pay it off, he can be better than wide receiver 43.
Like significantly?
No. No.
So you still think he's going to be like a wide receiver 3 on a fantasy team?
Probably.
So that was a conversation regarding Underdog Fantasy, who the bootleg football guys work with. They currently, in their preseason rankings, have Christian Kirk slated as the number 30 overall wide receiver in the National Football League, which with 32 teams would suggest he's your wide receiver one, excuse me. Brian Thomas Jr. coming in a little bit later in the 40s. To me, Taylor, I heard that, and I actually audibly said aloud in my car as I was listening to it, okay, so you're essentially saying Brian Thomas Jr., if he could be what Jordan Addison was behind Justin Jefferson, and I know that Justin Jefferson's in glorified air, but if he could be that number 2 that Jordan Addison was in Minnesota last year, or what Zay Flowers began the year in Baltimore as in his rookie season last year, and then you look at where he ended, that would be a above and beyond great season for Brian Thomas Jr. in his debut in the National Football League. But the bigger conversation there is, can Brian Thomas Jr. by season's end be among the top 40 wide receivers in the National Football League?
And I think it's such an interesting conversation, because I genuinely think by the end of the season we can be talking about him in that realm. I think of a comparison like Jackson Smith and Jigba and what he was in Seattle, because he was true and told that wide receiver number 3 in their receiving room, but at the end of the season, he had, 628 yards, 4 touchdowns. I think we'd expect / want a little more from Brian Thomas Jr., but I do think what you have to keep in mind, too, is that connection that Trevor has with Christian Kirk. That's not going to just go away adding somebody like BTJ. And I think that you're still going to count on a lot of yards and a lot of receptions for Christian Kirk. That's just who he is. Now, the big question for me is a Gabe Davis and how much they fit him into this offense, because Gabe Davis has never been that guy who's had more than 45 receptions. Can he be that guy in an offense with Trevor Lawrence? Also, you've got a guy, Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram and Trevor Lawrence now have this connection to where they've been able to get him career high receptions, career high yards, all of these other factors. So to me, I think it will be, that's why I said the more Jackson Smith and Jigba type scenario, because early in the season, you were not seeing a whole lot from JSN. Later in the season, you really started to see him pick up. He was getting more receptions. He was getting more yards. You saw him in the end zone quite a bit more than you did in those first, let's say, 6, 7, 8 games. And so I could see something like that with Brian Thomas Jr. And I know there'll probably be more opportunity earlier, because maybe teams aren't focusing on, they're not feeling like they have to put a guy on Brian Thomas Jr. because he's a rookie. How much are they going to fit him in? You have to worry about Evan Ingram, and you have to worry about Christian Kirk and Gabe Davis. And so maybe they shy away from that a little bit, so the production pops a little early, but then teams soon figure out, okay, this guy can be a weapon, and he can be a weapon in multiple places on the football field. So they start keeping a little more eye on Brian Thomas Jr., and that's when we'll really see what type of wide receiver he is, which I think is a really, really good one and will continue to be that in the NFL.
So before we get to our question of the day and we send it out into the ethos of X and social media and the internet, yes, 910 on the text line, designed by Lifetime Enclosures. Wide receiver 30 in terms of fantasy football is a 2-3 in fantasy football. Yes, we are taking that conversation, though. If Christian Kirk is a 2, but he's a high-end 2 in fantasy. But he is the quote-unquote best, most productive receiver on the Jags, according to this argument. And Brian Thomas Jr. is 19 spots behind him. Is that actually the case by season's end? Which leads us to our question of the day, which Dylan Denmark will send out into X. Who will have the most receiving yards in 2024 for the Jacksonville Jaguars? You can respond to that question on X. You also can hit us up on the text line, the aforementioned text line, designed by Lifetime Enclosures, as well as our YouTube chat line at the MyBookie Digital Studios. Dylan, let's give it 4 options. Christian Kirk being 1 to lead the Jaguars in receiving yards, Brian Thomas Jr., Gabe Davis, and let's throw Evan Ingram in there because I think that that's a very important part of this argument. How does Evan Ingram factor into this 2024 Jacksonville Jaguars offense, Taylor? Since you brought up Gabe Davis, and because I just gave the disclaimer of wide receiver 30 in fantasy versus wide receiver 30 in the National Football League, do you know, wide receivers and tight ends combined, leading receiver, yards in a season, 2023, do you know who number 49 was in the National Football League last year?
I didn't.
It was Gabe Davis, who had 746
we were going
yards.
that way
yes.
in some way, yes.
And so that's where I am very curious because I agree with the point that the guys on Bootleg Football made. The hope is that teams will roll coverage, bring double teams for Christian Kirk because he's the known commodity. That could open up opportunity for Brian Thomas Jr. If Brian Thomas Jr. is to flash, though, that is where this offense gets back to where it was in 2022, but with more marquee names, with all due respect to Marvin Jones and Zay Jones. That is where, okay, you rolled coverage onto Kirk, and that allowed Brian Thomas Jr. to get downfield and score. Well, now you're going to bring safety help over the top for him, but wait, you have Gabe Davis open.
Yeah.
And so that is where I think this offense takes it to the next level, because even when you had Zay Jones and Marvin Jones, neither of those two players' forte is stretching the field from that Z wide receiver, X wide receiver position and just getting vertical. That is not their specialty. They're both much more nuanced route runners, can also do some dirty work over the middle. And so that is where I think, they really didn't talk about it in the episode about the presence of Gabe Davis, a guy who, if you look at the success Stephon Diggs was able to have in his first few years in Buffalo, I don't think Gabe Davis gets enough credit for being a big reason as to why.
Yeah, and it was one of the stats. I don't know, Mia, if it was the week you were here. I think you were here when I said that Gabe Davis had the top when it comes to easy targets, which is one of the most open wide receivers. He was the second most open wide receiver when it came to end zone targets last season. The only guy ahead of him was Stephon Diggs. Those two. So whether that's what the Bills were able to scheme up, and they knew the strengths of Josh Allen, and they knew that Josh Allen could also move a little bit, so some teams had to put a spy on them, and then sometimes that opens things up in the back end. So there's multiple facets of how that offense is a little bit different. But for me, it is a big indicator that I just don't think we truly had that here last season. That guy, and now we have two, by the way, Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis.
They doubled down.
Yes,
They said, we can't stretch
guys.
the field. We're going to go get 2 of them, which part of that, of course, was you had to go get Gabe Davis because you couldn't guarantee Brian Thomas Jr. was going to be sitting there in the waitings for you during the NFL draft.
Yeah, and that's why it's always the interesting argument, and we've had it so much this offseason that it's almost just like beating a dead horse at this time when they're like, I can't believe they feel like they replaced Calvin Ridley with Gabe Davis. That was not what was happening there. Gabe Davis obviously was something that they wanted to go get a red zone. They knew they needed somebody. They had a terrible red zone percentage the last 2 years. They knew they needed to add a wide receiver who had a strength in that, and Gabe Davis did. But that wasn't a Calvin Ridley replacement. Brian Thomas Jr. is more so a Calvin Ridley replacement than Gabe Davis was. They just got lucky enough to where they were able to get both in one offseason.
And that's why in that clip we just listened to from Bootleg Football, EJ Snyder made the point, or rather Brett made the point of Brian Thomas Jr. isn't going to be expected to be the Calvin Ridley #1 alpha that we thought Calvin Ridley would be until 2025. But I do think he is going to be called upon to play that X position and to stretch the field opposite Gabe Davis. And that's an important thing. Like, I think the ceiling for Brian Thomas Jr. is a nuanced route runner beyond what he was able to do at LSU, which we still don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, from what we've heard from the coaching staff here in Jacksonville, he can run more routes than he was asked to do at LSU. They just said, all right, kind of, the signature Joe Burrow, screw it, Jamar's down there somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, listen, it works in the Bayou, so they're going to just keep doing that because they got the similar personnel as they had once upon a time in 2019. But I think eventually, yes, he will be that guy that could also come across the middle.
And I also think it gives Christian Kirk, which we've already seen Christian Kirk be successful here with Trevor, but it also gives Christian Kirk that opportunity to just be the Christian Kirk he needs to be and not have to do too much, because I do feel like in certain aspects the last 2 years we were asking Christian Kirk to do everything, and it almost hurt the offense in certain ways, because I do think where we talk about some of Trevor's struggles are some of the checkdowns or the shorter yardage areas, because we know Trevor likes to go vertical. We know he likes to go down the field, but he just didn't have that guy. So I think they tried to force some opportunities for some of the guys that, like an Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk, that's just not their strengths.
To no surprise, our poll question has been up for exactly 1 minute. We've got about 20 votes in, and 77.8% of you say Christian Kirk will lead the Jaguars in receiving yards in 2024. And I think you make the good point, Taylor, of, well, look at what the offense turned into when he wasn't on the field. And again, I don't know how much involvement outside of being present for the install and for OTAs that Christian Kirk had in the development and the crafting of this offense once upon a time in the spring of 2023. But it sure as heck seemed like he was such an important cog in the machine that when you didn't have him, and because he is a high IQ player who could play multiple positions, whether that's in the slot or outside, you couldn't plug and play anybody else. And perhaps that speaks to that onboarding point that we've made such a big deal about this offseason, both on this program as well as within the walls of the Miller Electric Center. Now, the other point I wanted to get at from this episode that we're reacting to from Bootleg Football, the Jaguars-specific episode, Evan Ingram. I think we all forget the fact that Evan Ingram came up 37 yards short of 1,000 yards last season, despite 114 catches, which that yards per catch number just blows my mind. That was 8.4. Travis Kelce slightly ahead of him with a 10.6 yards per catch, so not a whole heck of a lot. Only had 20-some-odd more yards more than Evan Ingram last year. That was good for 29th. Evan Ingram was 30th overall in the league. But I'm curious, is he a safety valve in the Jaguars' 2024 offense, or is he a focal point? Because last year he had to become a focal point, especially in the final 7 weeks of the season. But I think that because this team was trying to operate within a 15-yard box, or at least that's how it looked like, despite the downfield numbers that for some reason look better on paper than they did the season prior. I felt like because they were playing the structure of the offense within this box, you had to go to that safety valve because he's the one who's going to do the dirty work over the middle and was going to win at the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and I think and that's why it's going to be so interesting to watch this offense, because it's something we've talked about a lot when we say that Doug Peterson loves his tight ends and he loves making sure his tight ends fit in. We also say that Evan Ingram's more of the receiving type of tight end. And so how much do we also even see a guy like a Brenton Strange, who people were kind of shouting out of why did we even draft this guy last season? Do we see him mixed in a little bit more and see them doing more, a little bit more tight end stuff every now and then? They have to, I know, because you have to start mixing up this offense, and we'll go on in my tangent, brought to you by Chick-fil-A in a little while. I will go in depth about some of those factors of what the offense, where the struggles came, and let me tell you, it's many things. It wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just an injury. Many things factored in to some of the issues that was coming from the offense, but part of that is it was a very predictable offense, and they go into that in this bootleg episode. So I think that you almost, with what you've been able to see from Evan Ingram, you want him to be a focal point, in my opinion, because he's just been able to be so productive. If you can get 114 receptions out of somebody, you have to, you feel like that's a large part of your offense at that point.
Would it surprise you then? Those numbers I outlined from Travis Kelce, who's regarded as tight end one, pretty much consensus across the board. Evan Ingram, we just alluded to, 114 catches, over 900 receiving yards, was on the verge of setting the all-time tight end record.
Yep.
This may surprise you then, Taylor Dahl and Dylan Denmark and our Heeligan Nation, because Underdog Fantasy currently has Evan Ingram projected as tight end number 9. Let's listen about this one.
Listening to that note on Richard Angulo, coaching Evan Ingram to career highs in catches and yards, that he wouldn't be at a value in fantasy, but you'd be dead wrong. Even though he finished as TE2 last year in terms of total points, he was TE6 in terms of points per game. He is going as TE9 in fantasy right now. So if you think that Evan Ingram is going to finish higher than TE9, even if it's not way higher, but if you think he's got another TE4, TE5 season in him, which honestly, I think he does because Calvin Ridley's not there.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to throw to somebody who's not Christian Kirk. And I'm not 100% sure it's Brian Thomas Jr. yet. It's more of a 2025 thing, a 2024 thing. Like, yeah, Evan Ingram's going to get a lot of targets. He's going to get a lot of catches. Like, he didn't get 114 last year out of thin air. It's probably going to happen again.
Okay, so there it is. Let's focus on that. Just because Calvin Ridley's gone.
Yeah.
I understand Calvin Ridley had 1,000 yards last year, and that was despite not knowing where he was half the time. I am curious because a year ago this time we were discussing how Marvin Jones Jr. was the only one subtracted of substance from the 2022 offense. And the notion was, oh, well, Calvin Ridley's going to take all of the production that Marvin Jones Jr. had and then also pull from Christian Kirk and pull from Zay Jones. What is that conversation, especially as it relates to today's question of the day? What is the ratio of you lose 1,000 yards from Calvin Ridley? You lose 1,000 yards, and what was that? How many catches did he have? I'm pulling it up right now. He had 1,116 yards and 76 catches. How are you distributing that? Is it simply one person? Because, as we just said, the Jaguars doubled down. They bring in 2 other guys. But also, if you get a healthy season of Christian Kirk, how does that affect that ratio?
So here's one thing that I think factors into it a ton, and it is something where we can point to injuries. Because when you look at Evan Ingram, the first half of the season, his receptions sat 4, 5, 6, 7. Every game had max 7 receptions. This is 2023. This is last year. Yes. Max.
Because in 2022 it was similar, but I think a lot of that was them finding ways
trying
to
figure out how they're getting him in. So last year, the top in the first half of the season was 7 receptions. You hit halfway through the season when you're starting to deal with the Zay Jones injury and you're dealing with Christian Kirk a few weeks after that. He has 4 games with 10, 11, 10, 10, another 9. So you're getting that uptick in the second half because you
the wide receivers were so banged
truly
up.
had nobody to throw to at that point. So I can see, I still think he should be tight end 4 or 5. I do think he should still be up there just based on what he's been able to do here the last couple seasons in Jacksonville. But I get why people think that maybe that uptick is going to go down a tad, like the amount that he's getting the ball, just because they didn't even mention Gabe Davis, and you said that. They didn't mention it in this conversation either.
He was top 50 wide receiver last year.
He's going to get targets. He's going to get those red zone targets. He's going to get them important because he's one of those guys, too, when it's like a 3rd and 9 that you need to get the ball to, he's going to be somebody that Trevor's going to be looking for. In addition, we're hoping that the run game is fixed. Last year, they did not run the ball. And this year, you are counting on that balance of the run pass to be a little more evened out. And so because of that, that also, to me, is some of those receptions and some of those targets getting taken away from Evan Ingram. I still think I would still guarantee high 80s, low 90s, in my opinion, of his receptions. I don't see 100+ again, but I do think he's still going to be such an important part of this offense. And he's proven now that he can be that person too.
Is he going to lead the Jaguars in receiving yards, though? Because technically, if you subtract Calvin Ridley, because Calvin Ridley led the Jaguars in receiving yards last year, but if we're taking him out, your leading receiver is Evan Ingram coming into this season. And again, part of that is Christian Kirk missed
and
the
that's
last
why
6
I think
games.
I would still say Kirk. And if Kirk's healthy, I think he'll still be that guy. And like I think Evan will be right around what he was last year, yardage-wise, but less receptions. Because that was an interesting number. George Kittle had an insane number when it came to 40 less receptions or something like that, but in a lot more yardage. I could see Evan Ingram's reception number going down a tad, but yardage staying about the same. Right around that 1,000-yard mark, but like I said, high 80s, low 90s when it comes to that reception share for him.
And I think part of that, and I know they touched upon this in the Bootleg Football episode we're reacting to, but also a couple other national podcasts I listened to this week. The Jaguars were among the worst teams in yards after catch. I don't think we've talked about that enough. They were 19th. So not the worst, but when you consider that it was just 10.6 yards after the catch, I mean, that speaks to why George Kittle and the San Francisco 49ers, who were number 1, by the way, why that ratio between receptions and total yards is such an ocean between Evan Ingram and George Kittle.
And I do think in that they did say I think he goes on to say worst yards at the per reception. So the total yak, I don't think they were dead last, but when it came to their yards after contact per reception, they were last. And so he goes into that detail. That's something, those are all numbers. And again, in my tangent brought to you by Chick-fil-A coming up, I'm going to go over some of these numbers of what they kind of list of the issues in Jacksonville last season. But things like that are the little tiny just drops of things that affected the offense. And the defense had the same tiny little marks too that we were seeing. And that's why when we were watching the team and they're using that word weird, that's the word that's used, because there was truly moments where you were watching the Jaguars and you're like, this is a top 5 team. And then next thing you know, the next week you were like, well, maybe they're not. Maybe they're a bottom 5 team. Can't quite figure it out. And I think that's why, because there's all these little tiny things that were wrong at different times, and all of a sudden they all went wrong at the same time, and that's when things started to collapse.
The manifestation of death by 1,000 paper cuts in real life. That is the 2023 Jacksonville Jaguars, per the Bootleg Football episode, which we are reacting to. And as Taylor alluded to, let's talk about the run game. Where did the Jacksonville Jaguars go wrong in the run game? How can they rectify that in less than 1 year's time? We will do that next with Taylor's Tangent, coming up on a Wednesday edition of Helmets and Heels.
Helmets and Heels.
Kingfish Pest Control Wednesday.
There's a new one-stop shop for all things Jags. Subscribe to the 1010XL Jaguars YouTube channel. One-on-one interviews with players, practice footage, podcasts, and more. If you're looking for the best Big Cat coverage around, look no further. 1010XL Jaguars on YouTube.
Mia here, and we've all been there before. A weekend trip to the casino? Canceled because real life came calling. MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game for you. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your home. The live casino is so easy to use, folks. Just go to mybookie.ag and click Live Casino at the top next to Sportsbook. You'll find live dealers ready to deal or spin, just like you're at the casino. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience where the action is in your hands. And yes, the rumors are true. You don't even need to wear pants. Start at MyBookie today with a generous sign-up bonus using promo code 1010XL and a revamped loyalty program ensuring a host of exclusive VIP perks. Sign up and hit the casino with promo code 1010XL. The more you play, the more you win, only with MyBookie.
Enter the Snickers Ice Cream Chill All Summer Sweepstakes for your chance to win a summer supply of Snickers ice cream, a meet and greet with our head coach, and a VIP training camp experience during Jaguars training camp. For more information, please visit jaguars.com/sweepstakes. The Snickers Ice Cream Chill All Summer Sweepstakes ends 11:59 on Monday, July 8th. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Must be 18 or older and a legal resident of Florida or Georgia. Promotional period is June 4th to July 8th. Total ARV of prizes is $14.20. Prize details and winner selection date specified in official rules. Sponsor Jacksonville Jaguars, LLC. 1 Everbank Stadium Drive, Jacksonville, Florida 32202. Odds of winning depend on total number of entries received.
After consulting with several orthopedic specialists about my constant knee pain, I chose Southeast Orthopedic Specialist and Dr. Chris Swanson to handle my surgery. Their professionalism let me know this team was the one for me. The surgery was very successful, and if I ever have a future need, I'll continue to trust Southeast Orthopedic Specialists to take care of me.
Relieve pain and get back to life. Southeast Orthopedic Specialists.
Expert Automotive is ready to keep you cool this summer. Right now, get an AC inspection or a system cooling checkup. Your choice for only $19.99. Their gift to you this summer is $50 off any service and a free tire rotation with any service. Their ASE certified technicians can keep your car cool without breaking the bank this summer. Call them at 374-3373 to get an appointment today. Expert Automotive. They never sell greed, only what you need.
Navy Mutual was created by service members for service members, so we know what it means to serve. Our policies have no active duty service restrictions, so you can rest assured that you're covered no matter your duty station, home or abroad. To go even further, we promise that premiums will not be higher for those who serve in dangerous environments, including aviation, diving, or on deployments. Let us help you protect those you love the most. Learn more at NavyMutual.com. counterparts.org.
Don't make a bad call when it comes to servicing your home. Cooling off with a baby pool in the house to fix your air conditioning problem is a bad call. Trying to catch a wave in a flooded bathroom is a bad call. Using a burning electrical panel to make s'mores is a bad call. The next time something goes wrong, make a good call to Donovan.
Whether you need air, electric, or plumbing service, Donovan is always a good call. It's why we've been trusted by our customers for almost 40 years and why you can trust us to deliver fast, reliable service to your home. Donovan, always a good call.
Visit DonovanAC.com today.
Any action? Find more fish on the Ring Power Fishing Forecast Show.
That's a big redfish, guys.
With Captain Kevin Faber.
Oh, my gosh.
Brought to you by Awaken 180 Weight Loss.
Thursday nights at 6
on 1010XL AM.
What's more American than grilling out for the 4th of July? Check out southernsteerbutcher.com or our social media channels for all of our 4th of July specials running June 29th through July 7th.
For tasty tips and juicy breasts, choose Southern Steer Butcher.
Make your outdoor living perfect with Art of Natural Stone. Pavers, patios, gravel, pool decks, and more. Using all natural stone design, and they do the installation. Visit Art of Natural Stone on Route 1 near Bartram Springs or on Beach Boulevard. If you're an experienced, skilled plumber or welder that's MedGas certified and you're tired of working for a company that just doesn't treat you right, Local 234 is the place for you. Their pay is the best in the business. You'll walk away with $35.09 an hour in your pocket. With benefits, that's just over $50 an hour. Local 234 has been around since 1901, and that means something. Visit UA234.com to send your resume. Local 234. Make the right connection.
1010XL is presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Protecting you and your family. Call 396-5555. Jacksonville.
This is Helmets and Heels.
Kept classy by First Coast Lighting and Fans. Upscale lighting, fans, and home decor.
On 1010XL.
Welcome back into a Wednesday edition of Helmets and Heels. Mia O'Brien, Taylor Dahl, Dylan Denmark. We are with you till 2 p.m. Going to get into the college football ranks coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. But here in the 12 o'clock hour, we stay on your Jacksonville Jaguars, reacting to Bootleg Football's Jacksonville Jaguars 2024 season preview. And our question of the day, building off of the episode our friends E.J. Snyder and Brett Coleman did, who will have the most receiving yards for the Jacksonville Jaguars in 2024? As is expected, I think, Taylor, we have now nearly 100 votes in since this poll went out on X at 12:13, and 65.2% of you say Christian Kirk will lead the Jaguars in receiving yards in 2024. Brian Thomas Jr., a close second, 18.5%, not so close. Evan Ingram third with 10.9% of the vote, and Gabe Davis last at 5.4% of the vote. That is the receivers and that wide receiver tight end room that has been so critical to an offense that was top 10 in passing last year, Taylor Dahl, but they were bottom 5 in rushing. Explain to me why.
Yeah, I think it's my tangent time, Mia.
Oh, let's do it.
Now, Taylor's Tangent, served up by Chick-fil-A on 1010XL.
So as I mentioned in the last segment, there's a lot of weird. I'm going to keep using that word today because it's the only way to describe some of the things.
Death by, I'm telling you, they are the manifest. I'm going to run with that. We had the mashed potato line yesterday with Cole Thompson from SEC Unfiltered. The manifestation of death by 1,000 paper cuts. The 2023 Jacksonville Jaguars,
yes.
Everyone.
Yes. So here's a few stats that went along with last season and some of the things that factored into the collapse at the end. And this also kind of points to, though, why the team, I don't think, and I've mentioned this many times, was quite ready at all, even before they had their collapse. Even when they were 8-3, it was more so the fact that things hadn't really caught up and happened at one time. I still think there was a lot of problems with that offense, and some of it was just the predictability of it. But here's a few stats that kind of, and this isn't just after, this wasn't the late collapse. This is season-wide numbers of what was going on offensively on this team. So they had the third most passing yards taken away from pass interference. They had the most touchdowns taken away by pass interference. 4. The next team closest to them had 2. Averaged only 1.8. Oh, they averaged 1.8 giveaways per game. Lost 1 fumble per game. So you're pretty much saying you're going to lose the football twice per game is what was happening last season. Third most passes broken up in the end zone. Many things I think we could factor into that problem. Reliable. They were reliable on kicks, but not over 50 yards. They were 25th in field goal percentage above 50 yards. So pretty much it was like, you better get inside the 30 or you're not scoring.
Which is hilarious because they signed Brandon McManus
for that
because
reason.
they felt the previous two kickers couldn't kick over 50 yards. Continue.
Interesting. They had the highest number. This is a number I think that most people know, but highest number of stuffed runs behind the line of scrimmage. The wide receivers, as you mentioned earlier, but were dead last in yards after contact per reception. And then the offense, they had the 30th rush offense and the 23rd rush defense. So as I got to those two last numbers, I was like, there's a major problem here, and it was the run in general. The defense couldn't stop the run. The offense couldn't run the ball. When you are getting stuffed behind the line of scrimmage, the high amount that they were, we've talked about how this led to some other issues. Now, on Bootleg, they go into kind of some of the things that were going on with the run defense, and Brett starts talking about how, okay, what was the issue? Is it all just the offensive line? Because that's what I think we say a lot here. You know, you got to fix the offensive line.
On offense.
Offensively, yes.
Yes, offensively. Was it simply you got to fix the offensive line, and that's it?
And so Brett kind of goes into some details. I'm going to play a clip of what exactly was going on with the offense that was making the run have so many problems, but also some of the other factors that led into the issues that led to the collapse later in the season. Dylan?
And it's kind of interesting because the more I dug into it, the more I felt this was a very college-y offense, both in terms of how they throw the ball and especially how they run the ball, right? Very shotgun heavy, about 78% shotgun, which is top 5 or 6 in the league. It's not quite Eagles, where it's like, completely allergic to under center, but it's not that far off. We talked about the Colts being very 2x2 heavy, where they ran more 2x2 than anybody else in terms of receiver distribution. Jags were the exact opposite. They were very 3x1 heavy. They were one of the biggest 3x1 teams in the league. How they ran those 3x1s, though, I thought was very college-y. So, a bunch of nub looks where the one in 3x1 was an attached tight end, usually to the boundary. Then you got trips to the field. They did that out of 12 personnel. They also did it out of 11 personnel. But they really kind of over-indexed on those types of looks, in my opinion. Their run game I didn't feel was super imaginative. It was a lot of inside zone, a lot of duo, which when you're lining up that way, that's kind of all you can run. A little bit of shotgun power here and there, but we're talking about like a 10% call in their offense. Nothing too substantive. Again, it was mostly inside zone, mostly duo, which is, if you listen to the Eagles episode, I think it was last week, we kind of called that out of like, if you only line up one way, right, and the only time you're under center, like you have a pretty gnarly split in terms of run concepts you're running from under center. So teams know what you're going to run when you're running under center. They know what you're going to run when you're in the shotgun, based on where your tight ends are and where your back is aligned. Like, they were one of the easiest offenses to find trends in terms of run concepts based on back alignment, tight end being on, tight end being off. Like they were just a very unimaginative, easy to game plan for running game.
So a couple things stood out to me with this. Number one, when you talk about an inside zone and duo run game, which he mentioned, it's the type of run game that it's like the downhill, mashing guys up front. That's the type of run game that you're expecting that's your scheme. And the Jags obviously didn't have that, and I think some of that may have been injuries. So in the same frame, he is saying it was a little bit of the offensive line because they were running a offense. They were running, at least on the run side, an offense that you need 5 really, really monster dudes to be on your offensive line, and they did not have that.
If you're going to run inside zone or inside duo, you need some maulers.
You have to.
Brandon Scherff's not a mauler anymore.
No.
And I think he can be, but if he's going to be, he needs 5 maulers opposite him.
Surrounding him, yes.
And here's the crazy part about this. For me, because I heard the same exact clip and I thought the same exact thing when I was listening to their podcast. Phil Rauscher was hired as the offensive line coach because he is considered, behind Bill Callahan, to be the next great outside zone savvy offensive line genius in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I heard Brett say the percentages of how much they ran
running the
inside zone and duo
I
versus
know.
outside zone, which makes a ton of sense because they couldn't get out to the edge.
Yep.
And so they just decided, well, we're going to try to run the ball up the middle.
Yeah, which clearly wasn't working.
What is the point of that? So let's go to
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
Also, because in this, when you are running these type of schemes too in your run game, having a predictable alignment and just concept in general, that's another thing that points to you having to have 5 guys on the line where you can run that.
We can
type
beat
of thing.
you straight up 5-on-4 if you're or 5-on-3
because everybody knows what
yeah.
you're doing the moment you step out on the football field.
But we still believe we can beat you.
Yes.
And you can believe that, but when the results aren't there, then you probably got to
when
modify.
you're getting stuffed behind the line of scrimmage, the majority of the times you're running the ball, clearly it's not working.
Right. So because you don't have the dudes, so you have to scheme it up instead. Which, you know what? Once upon a time, I sat at this very desk, or rather the previous desk here at HQ, and was told that the Jags had a 2, a 2, and a 3 in Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Marvin Jones. And what did that offense go on to do? I don't know. They made the second round of the playoffs and took the Chiefs down to the wire. And how they did it, yes, those 3 players played above their quote-unquote level, and Trevor Lawrence was able to elevate their play, but they also were schemed into the perfect position.
Yep.
And so if your offensive line, mano-a-mano, is not getting it done, that's where scheme comes in. And that is where I think it's very important to go back to, what did Press Taylor say about a month ago? We took this offense down to the studs.
Yep.
And Hayes Carlyon asked him in his final availability, he said to him, what did you mean when you said that? And he said, well, specifically the run game.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a surprise that, I don't know if you guys have been snooping on the Jaguars website of late, but Phil Rauscher now has the run game coordinator title.
Mm-hmm.
Because, quite frankly, I don't know where the leader of who is leading the run game was coming from in that building last year.
And that's that part of my question when I heard that too was, it's interesting that Doug at some point last season, and I mentioned this in other aspects too, when there was issues on the defensive side of the ball and they're saying they weren't learning alignment and all this thing, like where was Doug in certain times of last year then? Because if you are having a team where both sides of your trenches are not able to do their job at an efficient level and there was no major changes made whatsoever, I think that's an issue. But I think the next question now that we're looking ahead, we're tired of looking at last season. So now we're looking at right now, are Mitch Morse and Eric Armstead enough? Because that's what they did. Those are the 2 moves they made for that line, and we're, a healthy Devon Hamilton. We know some of those other factors, but
Ezra
those are
Cleveland
the 2
for a full season,
big move. That's the 2 moves they made this last offseason to fix what were the 2 biggest problems on this team, and that led to so many other issues. Because when you're talking about teams being able to run all over you and you having a bottom tier run defense, and then you're talking about having a very bottom tier run offense, and you made 1 move on your offensive line and you made 1 move on your defensive line, is that enough? But I would say this does change, because we've talked about how much the center position does help. We talked about how much Eric Armstead can do, and the addition, the healthy Devon and healthy Ezra on the other side, all of these factors. But to me, Doug clearly saw that these trenches were an issue, and he had to go get 2 powerful men who can be that type of guy to take over and really dominate the type of scheme he wants to run. Because he saw he at some point last year, he must have been like, there's nothing I could do to fix this at this point. We just don't have the manpower to do it.
Right, and especially when they're at the heart.
Yeah.
They're literally at the center of both the offensive and defensive line. This is from Football Insights for those of you who aren't fans of bootleg or underdog fantasy, because there's a couple of you hooligans out there, and you'd like for another source, another site. So from Football Insights, Trevor Lawrence's pressure to sack rate out of empty, since we're talking about under center versus out of the shotgun. He dropped back 116 times in 2021, and he had a pressure rate of 9.4%. In 2022, he dropped back 94 times, slightly less, 9.5% pressure to sack rate out of empty. In 2023, he dropped back 86 times, and he was pressured 40.9% of the time. And this website...
Some of that is on Trevor.
Right. Some of that is on Trevor. Some of that is on perhaps the injuries.
Because other quarterbacks get blamed for that.
The structure.
The ones...
But how much of it speaks to the pass protection at center specifically.
Yes, and that I saw that stat yesterday too, and I was that is not the number you want to see that drastically increase. And so I was kind of reading through the comments on it, and a lot of people were speaking to the offensive line and how much they started to just beat up in general too, but also not having a center position that you could trust. And most of us were shouting that even preseason last year, but it wasn't changed. And then so you go through the season, and then now you're adding on an injured quarterback who isn't able to move the way he was able to move, so not able to escape some of the sacks, because that was one of Trevor's biggest traits that you liked in college, coming out of college into the NFL, was his way to avoid sacks. And all of a sudden last year, not only was he getting pressured more, but he was also not able to get out of a lot of the situations he was to previously.
Because he was hurt.
And so that
they had to
redesign
redesign the offense. I know, I can tell you for a fact, the week of the Saints game, they had to completely change the game plan, because they said we have to expect him not to run. And then, of course, he runs for 45 yards or something on a single play.
I mean, there's a reason we've said it here in Jacksonville when we go play Patrick Mahomes and he hurts his ankle. Go after his ankle. Go hurt Patrick Mahomes. Do you think those teams weren't coming in here in the second half of last season? Like, Trevor's banged up. He hasn't practiced. Go get him.
Yeah, force
get
him
out
to
of the
run.
pocket.
Yep, force him to run, force him to be horizontal, and then we'll work with that. And for those of you who don't subscribe so much to many of the content creators on the internet and the sports and football nerds, may I lend you some news and stats from Mina Kimes of ESPN. Trevor Lawrence, as has been well documented, had the second fastest time to throw behind Tua Tagovailoa. He got the ball out the quickest, second in the National Football League last year, only behind Tua. On throws between 2.5 and 4 seconds, that's how long he had to throw the ball out. He was pressured, and this was as of mid-November. This is before the injuries and before the slide.
Mm-hmm.
He was pressured on 43% of his dropbacks, the highest of any quarterback in the National Football League. And that's when things were good. That's when they were 6-2.
Yeah.
So,
that's not what you ideally want.
And again, I don't think it all falls on the offensive line, because I think Taylor hits the nail on the head with her tangent, which is if you're predictable, teams will pin their ears back and they will line up and play you inside of a box. Yeah. And that is what we saw, especially down the stretch run of the 2023 season. But we're on to 2024, and we're on to our next segment, our next break, Taylor. We've got a giveaway. Are you feeling hungry?
Yes, I'm feeling hungry.
You're hungry? Yeah, I've got a salad. I'm trying to be good. I ate out for breakfast
thinking I might
this
want
morning.
some chicken nuggets.
Ooh, chicken nuggets or chicken strips. How about some waffle fries? Yeah, we've got a Chick-fil-A giveaway coming up on the other side of this timeout on Helmets and Heels.
It's a Helmets and Heels Kingfish Pest Control Wednesday. All day, every day, year after year. Duval counts on 1010XL.
Jumbo Shrimp Baseball presented by FIS is home at 1-to-1 Financial Ballpark tonight at 6:05. Don't miss our Independence Day celebration with the biggest fireworks show of the year and free patriotic hats to the first 2,000 fans. All presented by Nimnicht Family of Dealerships. Tickets start at just $5. JackShrimp.com for tickets. That's JackShrimp.com. Jumbo Shrimp Baseball. Affordable family fun.
Hey, it's Roger Moore, CEO of Loan Pronto. If you're like me, you're getting crushed by rising costs of everything these days. I get it. It's brutal, and credit card rates are ridiculous and going higher. That's why at Loan Pronto, we launched our Express Equity Line of Credit to bring you the relief you and your family need, using your home, your most valuable asset. We've helped thousands of people like you get fast relief with cash. The average homeowner who does this gets tens of thousands in just days and is able to save $850 per month in overall expenses. I'm talking life-changing money. Your money that you have access to right now. Listen, if you're ready to get control of your finances and get off the hamster wheel, call Loan Pronto. You can get approved for Express Equity Line of Credit in just minutes, and we can get your cash in less than a week. Stop digging a deeper credit card hole today. Call Loan Pronto now. 904-999-1508. 904-999-1508. LoanPronto.com. 904-999-1508.
Equal housing lender. NMLS 166-1781. Subject to lender approval. NMLS consumeraccess.org.
Mia here, and you've heard me rave about my friends at Duck Duck Rooter, a full-service plumbing and septic company that helps with clogged drains, water heater installations and repairs, sewer line replacements, septic tank pump outs, inspections, drain field installations, and oh, so much more. But don't forget about Duck Duck Air Conditioning, the Jacksonville area's AC experts. When it gets hot this summer, should your AC not be working at your home or business, give my friends at Duck Duck AC a call. 904-862-6769.
Hello, First Coast. I'm sure by now you have seen our bright green GFL trucks and containers throughout the greater Jacksonville area. We're an industry leader in solid waste and would love the opportunity to earn your business. We're committed to customer service, reliability, and have an unwavering focus on safety. Whether commercial or construction, let us haul your waste away. Call 904-760-5880 to get a quote today from GFL, Green for Life.
Has someone you care about been arrested or had their driver's license taken away? I'm Susan Cohen, and I work with David Robbins at the law firm of Epstein & Robbins. We are experienced fighters for those charged with DUI, domestic violence, and all criminal offenses. In your battle with the justice system, there's only one thing you need to know. Dial David 24/7 at Epstein & Robbins, 354-5645. 354-5645.
Find your why in your next career move at the First Coast YMCA. Everyone can get involved and make a difference in your community at the Y. And if you'd like to turn your passion into a fulfilling career, the Y is an equal opportunity employer and is now hiring youth program leaders, lifeguards, swim instructors, and more. Plus, Y staff enjoy benefits including free YMCA membership and free childcare while you work. Find your passion, find your why in a career at fcymca.org.
This date in sports history is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists.
On July 3rd, 1951, at the Men's PGA Championship in Oakmont, Sam Snead wins, marking his third PGA Championship title.
Hey guys, this is David Garrard, and I want to tell you about Clearwater Irrigation. They put my new sprinkler system in my new home at Jack's Beach, and I couldn't be happier. Oh, hey, John.
What's up, Dave? You know what this means. You're going to have to sing.
Man, I can't sing.
Then you'll fit right in, buddy. Clearwater Irrigation. We can't sing a lick, but we sure are good at sprinklers. Hit it, Dave.
And drainage, too.
ClearwaterJacks.com.
Men, if you're suffering from erectile dysfunction or PE, Prime Men's Medical Center will get your sex life back in just one visit. Their painless, breakthrough medical treatments eliminate ED and PE. Here's a specialist in men's health.
I'm Dr. Simovitz. Have Viagra or Cialis let you down? Prime Men's Medical Center offers the most effective treatments that eliminate ED and PE, with men lasting longer than ever. 98% of patients see instant results on their first visit.
Prime Men's Medical Center's breakthrough treatments will restore your sex life regardless of age or medical history. Your consultation and first treatment are free. Plus, you'll see instant results in the office. Plus, qualified patients will have their testosterone checked free. Call 904-902-8222. 904-902-8222. To regain your sex life in just one visit, call now. 904-902-8222.
Now that's what I call high quality H2O. If you want high quality water throughout your home, call your local water boy. We install equipment to solve any water problem. WaterboyJAX.com.
Hey, David here with Royal Pest Services. Men, are you struggling in the bedroom? Do spiders and roaches have you scared? Visit RoyalPestServices.com and let us help you get that man card back. Guaranteed results on our first visit.
1010XL is presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Protecting you and your family. Call 396-5555. Jacksonville.
Whoa, keep it up, Gavin.
Helmets and Heels is switched on by
First Coast Lighting and Fans.
Upscale lighting, fans, and home decor on 1010XL.
Are you hungry out there in Heeligan Nation? Might we interest you in Lunch for Two? Yes, it's true. It's Lunch with the Ladies, powered by Chick-fil-A. Taylor Dahl, let them know what they can win.
We have Lunch for Two to Chick-fil-A, so 2 gift cards. Lunch on us today if you give us a call at 641-1010. Let's say caller number 4.
All right, caller number 4 for that Chick-fil-A gift card for 2. On the other side of our next time out, we're going to begin a new series that we're unveiling here in the month of July on Helmets and Heels. We're calling it Scouting the Opposition. We're going to have one day a week. We're going to go in the order of Florida and Florida State's schedule. We're going to go from week 1 probably to about week 6, week 7, week 8, because let's be real, Texas is not going to look like the Texas on paper as it stands today, as it will when the Gators face them in November. And so we're going to debut that series here today, and we're going to begin on the Florida State side. Florida State's first opponent, of course, will come week 0 in Ireland against Georgia Tech. Myles Garrett, our utility player. No, not the Cleveland Browns defensive end. The Fox 5 weekend sports anchor up in Atlanta is going to join us on the other side of this timeout to break down what the Noles can expect from the Yellow Jackets later this summer. You are listening to Helmets and Heels on 1010XL and 92.5 FM.
Kingfish Pest Control Wednesday.
Helmets and Heels.
Where incredible lives.
Every single player had an incredible moment.
1010XL. Now you can watch 1010XL shows all day on X, Facebook, and YouTube. Brought to you by MyBookie. Experience Vegas from the comfort of your phone anytime, anywhere. Sign up today. Use promo code 1010XL.
Did you know you can charge the all-new Honda Electric Prologue in the same receptacle as your phone? You don't need these special charging stations at your home. Simply plug in your Honda or your phone. See your local Honda dealer now. We're electrified.
Mia here, and we've all been there before. A weekend trip to the casino? Canceled because real life came calling. MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. The live casino is so easy to use. Just go to MyBookie and click Live Casino at the top. You'll find live dealers ready to deal or spin just like you're at the casino. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action's in the palm of your hands and you don't even need to wear pants. Start at MyBookie today with a generous sign-up bonus using promo code 1010XL. A revamped loyalty program ensures a host of exclusive VIP perks. Sign up and hit the casino with promo code 1010XL. The more you play, the more you win, only with MyBookie.
American Electrical, Northeast Florida's highest-rated electricians, is hiring, and they're looking for people to train for careers. It's not just job training. They're giving you a license that no one can take away from you, training you for jobs that are always in demand and will offer you a peace of mind financially and for the future. Once you know a trade, you'll always be employable. All the details are at american-electrical.com, and with their American Electrical Academy, if you're selected, you'll learn the electrical trade absolutely free of charge. American Electrical Contractors, powered by professionalism.
Home of the Jaguars. WJXL AM Jacksonville Beach. WJXL FM Jacksonville Beach.
Hey, I'm Tony from Tony D's Pizza. People ask me all day long, is it the water that makes the difference? Well, yes and no. Even water can't make a good pizza. It's the ingredients, too. The best tomatoes, the best flour, and the best cheese. Oh, and a lot of love. Tony D's New York Pizza, Bay Meadows and 295.
There are 3 certainties in life: death, taxes, and if you stay in your home long enough, a new roof. Pick it here for our friends at Lockhart Roofing. Nobody better in Jacksonville. How do I know? They are a local certified Master Elite contractor, and that means they have a GAF Master Elite warranty. That's the best in the roofing industry. In this day and age, don't settle for cheap or discount roofers. Lockhart Roofing has been here for decades. They aren't going anywhere. Call my friends at Lockhart Roofing, 994-3851. That's 994-3851. Lockhart Roofing, Jacksonville's best for Jacksonville people.
Bueller Air and Plumbing presents Are You Cool?
Our returning champion, a basketball court sweat mopper from Jacksonville, Florida. Meet Lewis Cramp.
Great to be back, Merv.
There's only one category left on the board, Lewis. People you can trust to repair your air conditioner. Your 10 seconds starts now.
Well, I'm pretty handy with tools around. Right, so my Uncle Steve used to fix transmissions, so maybe he could... Okay, sorry. I guess just call the guys at Bueller?
That's right, Lewis. The highly trained technicians at Bueller Air and Plumbing have the tools and the experience to service any make and model of home air conditioner to make sure that you are cool.
You sure I can't just have a quick...
Yeah, we're done for today.
Stay cooler with Bueller.
Visit BuellerAir.com.
This is Molly McDonald with your 1010XL Southeast Orthopedic Specialist local sports update. The Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp smoked the Charlotte Knights in last night's game, winning 8-0. This is now the third shutout from the Jumbo Shrimp in the last 8 games. The offense swung for the fences with Marty Costes and Troy Johnston hitting home runs. Costes started off with a single to center in the first inning and followed up with a leadoff single in the 8th for his third hit of the night. Troy Johnston ripped a 2-run single in the 6th and finished off a 3-run homer in the 8th, giving the Shrimp the victory. They'll finish off their series tonight with first pitch at 6:05. Gators two-way standout Jack Caglione was named as the Division I Baseball Academic All-American of the Year by the College Sports Communicators. Caglione is Florida's all-time home run leader with a whopping 75 home runs, while hitting a school single-season record, all while maintaining a 3.64 grade point average. It's 91 degrees at 1 o'clock. Time and temp brought to you by Bueller Air Conditioning. Stay cooler with Bueller.
1010XL is presented by Farah & Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Protecting you and your family. Call 396-5555. Jacksonville.
Light up your lunch with Helmets and Heels.
Presented by First Coast Lighting and Fans.
On 1010XL.
Was anyone more excited than Dylan Denmark just now to give a call and welcome on our next guest on Helmets and Heels? Dylan, how excited were you to into the phone say, hello, is this Myles Garrett? Not Mr. Garrett, not Myles. Is this Myles Garrett?
Yeah, I mean, the real Myles Garrett, the fake Myles Garrett, you know, the one that plays for the Browns, the one in Atlanta.
Yeah, this is the one who went viral because he's not the one who plays for the Cleveland Browns, but he is a reoccurring guest here on Helmets and Heels officially. And he joins us now on our phone line to break down the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Again, if you missed it, we're debuting a new series over the next month here on Helmets and Heels. Denmark, I know you're a Gator, so I'm not going to make you do this, but I am going to make you do this. If you could play the war chant for us, sir, because we are previewing Florida State's first 7 opponents, and that begins with the aforementioned Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets in Ireland in late August. Myles, will you guys be making the trip across the pond?
I certainly wish. I've been trying to convince my boss to put me on that flight, but it's not looking good so far, Mia.
That's all right. You got to go last year. Or no, you didn't. Luke went last year, right? Luke Hetrick went last year.
He did. Yes.
Okay.
He got the cool trip.
Well, he joined us on Monday to talk NBA free agency. You are joining us today to discuss Georgia Tech, a team that is so both physically and near and dear to the hearts of our friends at Fox 5 in Atlanta. Big picture, Myles, with everything that has gone on in the ACC, with teams that are trying to break away, teams that are saying this is mine for the taking, where does Georgia Tech fall in that spectrum of the ACC right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now Georgia Tech has a really good opportunity to not seize control of the ACC because I think, you still have your powers in Florida State and, Clemson's not going anywhere yet. But at the same time, I do think they have a good opportunity to kind of show off what they can do. Brent Key has put together a very good recruiting class this cycle. It kind of took them a couple of years to recover from the Paul Johnson and Jeff Collins era, if you want to call it that, of, maybe the lackluster recruits. Jeff Collins had some good recruits early on, but kind of lost his way after, the on-field success didn't follow. So they finally have put together that top 20 class, which should translate to some more wins. They had some good ones last year. A good stepping stone, I think, for Brent Key. And I do think there's a huge opportunity for them to really put their foot down and declare that they're one of the 3 best teams in the ACC.
I like that bold take. I want to get to that in a second. But when we're talking about Brent Key, this is a guy who, with Blake Bortles at UCF, was part of a 12-1 football season, goes and leads to one of an Alabama offensive line that we talk a ton about, and then now kind of has made his way up to this head coaching role in Georgia Tech, which has been really fun to watch. And last year, taking over that first year as head coach. So what did you see last year when it came to what Brent Key was able to add? Because it really felt like it just kind of sparked an offense there that we haven't really seen in a while.
Yeah, I think the big thing was just their offensive system as a whole. I mean, they have the transfer quarterback in Haynes King, which was huge for them. Malik Rutherford was a huge step up as well as the offense at the receiving position, of course. Jamal Haynes with the running back. So I do think that they took a huge step offensively. Buster Faulkner, the offensive coordinator coming from Georgia, I think was the biggest change for this team. Brett, as we just talked about, Jeff Collins didn't necessarily have the right guys in place. I think that was fairly obvious. Getting Chris Winkie in there as well, being the quarterbacks coach. You guys very familiar with him down there in Florida. Has done a pretty good job down there with Haynes King. So I think just the overall offensive system, they return a lot of guys on the offensive line. I think that's really been the X factor for this team. Haynes King has been terrific, or was terrific this past year. He just needs to cut down on the turnovers, and I think this offense will take another step to where it can and should be. I think Buster Faulkner is doing a lot of good things there with them.
Okay, let's get back to the hot take, Miles. Miles Garrett at Miles Garrett TV on X, of course, one of the sports anchor reporters at Fox 5 in Atlanta who covers Georgia Tech. You believe in a conference that is welcoming in Stanford, welcoming in SMU, that already has a Florida State team that many people believe should have made the playoff last year, that has a national championship coach in Dabo Swinney. Georgia Tech could be one of the best 3 teams in that conference by year's end.
Yes, I'm not afraid to say that. Now, of course, the schedule is pretty brutal. I do think that's something that should be put into play there when discussing what their season's going to look like. As you said, they have to open up against Florida State away. Then they obviously have to face off against Georgia. I know Georgia isn't in the ACC, but that's still another team that on paper right now you're going to say that's a pretty safe Georgia win. Notre Dame's always tough. Miami, you don't know what you're going to get out of them yet. UNC, Georgia Tech has, for some reason, had a lot of success against as of late, even when they are ranked and Georgia Tech is unranked. So it's hard to assess right now at the beginning of July. Injuries are going to happen, and there's going to be some surprises and some guys or some teams rather that maybe don't perform like we think. I mean, what are we going to see out of Florida State this year? Where they lost a lot of guys, new transfer quarterback, a lot of guys lost to the NFL draft. We don't know if they're going to repeat the same success. So I do think that that's an okay statement on my end to say that Georgia Tech could be a top. I'm not saying they will be. I'm saying they could be based on the recruiting class, what Brent Key has put together, and the guys they're really bringing back from last year's squad.
Well, Miles, to that point, I think an underrated storyline is what they were able to do last season with some of that schedule, because it was a one-score game at half against Georgia, if we want to talk about Georgia and the SEC. They took down Louisville. They took down Miami. They took down North Carolina. Those are all teams that when you're looking at the end of the season were really good wins, and then a really close one against a Georgia team. We know how that Miami game ended, and it was a little weird and wonky. But did you feel like these games were given to them more than one, or do you believe they're just truly on that pace now to be the competitive, to be able to kind of match up with some of these best in the ACC?
Well, I do think, to your point, that Miami one, I think, was gifted to them. I mean, as much of a Georgia Tech person that, I'm able to cover with this team, if they just take a knee, the game's over and Georgia Tech has another loss on their schedule. But I digress. I do think a lot of their other wins were kind of what they showed. I mean, North Carolina was a shootout. They scored a lot of points there. That game certainly could have gone either way with what Drake May was able to do with that team. But Georgia Tech won that game. There were some other games where they were kind of in it but weren't quite able to finish. I mean, the first game of the year when they lose to, I think it was maybe Syracuse, that game that was, I'm not sure, over at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But that game was in hand for most of the first half. Georgia Tech was up by 2 scores. You give that another win. You lose to Ole Miss, which is another one that, you were kind of expecting to happen. But then you have puzzling ones against Bowling Green. You beat Wake Forest, you lose to Bowling Green, you beat Miami. It was kind of this inconsistent back and forth that Georgia Tech wasn't really able to overcome and get more wins on their schedule. And the reason being for that was really just the turnover problem. They had a huge issue with turnovers last year. And if they are able to fix that this year, I think they can. I mean, they do have a relatively similar schedule. I think that they can, make quite a difference in the win-loss record if they can just cut back on that.
I just think, Miles, that it's a more veteran squad than Brent Key had when he was thrust into action in 2022 and then what he had last year. I mean, you just look at the depth chart right now. You've got 3 true sophomores between both sides of the ball starting, which is a far cry from 2 years ago where I think half of the starting lineup were underclassmen. One guy I have to ask, because he is a local, Trinity Christian's own, Miles Brooks. It's crazy to think because he was seeing some significant playing time again as part of that younger group that had to play early. for Georgia Tech early in his career because they didn't have the bodies. Now is kind of morphed into a senior leader. And so Miles, as well as any other senior guys who've stuck it out through the Jeff Collins departure to now the Brent Key era, you want to give some shine to.
Yeah, great name, by the way, Miles Brooks. He's huge. I think he's really one of the strong points for this team on defense, where it was kind of a weak area overall for this team defensively. I mean, I think the safety, the secondary area was sort of a strong suit for this team. I mean, he was a tackling machine with, I think over 100 tackles and a lot of broken passes. I think he's going to be an X factor for this group to maintain that consistency there. In the secondary, I mean, they're going to need him a lot. Clayton Powell-Lee I think he was second on the team in tackles this past year. They welcome in a pretty veteran group on that side. Now, again, they're going to need some help in the trenches, rather. The linebacking cores, they lost, I believe, a guy from the transfer portal. I forgot. I think Kyle Kennard is who they lost to South Carolina. They're going to have to replace his productivity. He was huge for them tackling-wise. So if they're able to replace that in the linebacking and defensive line area, that shouldn't be too much of a concern, but they may have to depend on Miles for his tackling ability if they aren't able to fill up those spots in the trenches.
And you mentioned quarterback Haynes King and the season he was able to have. There's another Haynes on the team, Jamal Haynes, who last season, the first 2 seasons at Georgia Tech, played wide receiver, switched to running back last season, had over 1,000 yards, I believe 7 touchdowns. Insane. I guess what it looks like it's going to kind of make his career. Do you know, was that a choice of his? Was that a Brent Key type of choice of him making that position change?
I think it was a combined choice. Don't take my word for that. I'll have to confirm that with Brent. But to my knowledge, I think it was kind of a mutual decision they reached. I believe when we talked to them preseason last year, they kind of came to that conclusion. But I mean, over 6 yards a carry is going to get you a starting job wherever you go. Jamal Haynes certainly had that explosiveness. And I think a lot of that had to do with what Georgia Tech's offense was. It was very much a pro-style, kind of a hybrid type offense that gets the running backs very much involved in the passing game. And I think Jamal thrived on that, being a former, wide receiver that was able to kind of utilize that aspect of his ability to make him a better running back. And I do think that paved a lot of ground for this new offensive system they decided to run this past year.
Yeah, and speaking of the running side, because Haynes King, you talked about the turnovers is something he needs to work on, but he had 2,700, well, he's the first one of 2 players in the nation that had 27 passing yards and 600 rushing yards. He had 30 total touchdowns. Is that duality something that you think they're just going to continue to focus on, because it looks like they're able to run the ball, which helps a ton?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, you also have Trey Cooley there in the backfield as well. And, of course, you have the receiving core, which is huge. I mean, Eric Singleton, Malik Rutherford were fantastic in this offense. And they utilized the tight end quite a bit, too. Brent Seether caught a few touchdown passes himself. I do think that will help this team out. They did do some weird kind of back and forth with Zach Pyron, the backup quarterback last year. I don't expect that to happen a whole lot this year. I know they like Zach Pyron and, down situation, whether you're close to the goal line. I know they like to get him in the game, but I don't expect to see that as much this year just because of the chemistry you have right now with Haynes King and Rutherford and Singleton. And as we were just talking about the running backs that, can be a little bit of a change of pace for this team. I do think that they're going to probably keep it the same way, but as far as, them mutually benefiting one another, I think that's certainly the case with this offense.
All right, Miles. Before Georgia Tech can become a top 3 program in the ACC this fall, to get them off on the right foot, as we've mentioned, they have to go across the pond to Ireland. I'm curious, what are the vibes around the Georgia Tech program, around the city of Atlanta? Are people going to make the journey? I know there's plenty of Noles fans here in Jacksonville that are headed that way.
Yeah, I do think it'll be probably a Florida State-dominated crowd. Georgia Tech has always struggled in that regard in getting fans out to games, especially at Bobby Dodd Stadium. But I mean, they're gonna have to. I think the vibe with this team right now is just it's kind of that prove it stage. You've got those wins last year that you've been waiting for to kind of give you some momentum going into next season. You have this top 20 class right now. You have a returning quarterback. You have a coach who loves the program, is a Georgia Tech grad, Nick Saban disciple. I think right now this year is sort of that prove it year. If they come out and are able to beat Florida State quickly, and I think close game or not, I think that'll prove to fans and maybe people across the country that Georgia Tech is for real. Now, of course, they got to put together consistency. That was something that they struggled with last year, beating a good team and then losing the very next week. They can't beat Florida State in week 0 and then somehow get upset at home by Georgia State, who is just across the street. That can't happen. But they had situations like that last year. So if they are able to get through their first 4-game stretch, if they're able to beat Florida State and get through the easy part of their schedule, Georgia State, Syracuse, VMI, then there's going to be some eyeballs on Georgia Tech, because then an interesting stretch happens with Louisville, Duke, and UNC, where you could set yourself up for a pretty big matchup against Notre Dame at home.
Yeah, and I think we're looking at, too, right now at the ACC, it could potentially be by the end, we're talking about Haynes King being one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. But speaking of that, you're kicking off August 24th against the Noles, which is what Mia alluded to while we're talking to you. What are the vibes there of a guy like DJ Uiagalelei and what you are expecting that right out the gates with Florida State?
Well, first of all, DJ Uiagalelei, I mean, he's a tank right now, right? I think they posted a video of him at 265 pounds. Is that what he's weighing right now?
Something like that.
I mean, the thing with DJ Uiagalelei, I always think back, because I used to work in South Bend, Indiana, covering Notre Dame. I always think back to that game where he started for Trevor Lawrence and put on a clinic against that Notre Dame defense. I think it was like a top 5 matchup. I think College Game Day was there and everything. And he looked terrific. I remember talking to some friends how he had number 1 overall pick potential just because of his arm strength, his size, playing in an offense like Clemson. But he somehow has kind of tailed off a little bit since then. And again, we talked about Georgia Tech, this being a prove-it year for them. It's a big prove-it year for DJ Uiagalelei, because you came into college football with so much hype, and now you're playing and starting for a team that was on the cusp of playing for the national championship last year. You're back in the national spotlight. What are you able to do with that? So it's going to be a lot of prove it for DJ Uiagalelei and Florida State. Was last year a fluke? Are they back to that national contender status? I feel like we're going to find out pretty quick with this team.
255, by the way, for DJ Uiagalelei.
255. My bad, DJ.
But it's kind of like DJ Burns was only 280 pounds during March Madness. And, I don't really know if I bought that.
Yeah, there was 7 or 8 touchdowns in that Notre Dame Clemson game that COVID year. It was
that was a tremendous game, and Miles was on the scene for that, and he is on the scene when Georgia Tech potentially becomes a top 3 program in 2024, and hopefully we can get you over to Ireland as well, sir.
Start the trend. We're going to get my boss to
get Miles
over
Garrett over to Ireland, if nothing else. Hey, you can try to pitch it and say opposing quarterbacks, DJU, he's going to be panicked because Miles Garrett's coming. Miles Garrett is coming. Thanks so much for hopping on, Miles.
Absolutely, guys. Y'all take care.
And again, you can find him at Miles Garrett TV on X. We're going to stay with college football real quick. Dylan? Oh, that was my cue. For my little sound effect. Oh, here we go. Sorry, I heard myself pop my microphone pop there. I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah, I don't know what just happened.
Wow.
It just
okay.
made a weird noise.
Okay, so don't mind the technical difficulties there, folks. That was supposed to be where we played the sound effect from Friends where we say pivot. There it is. Thank you, David Schwimmer. From Florida State, we head to Gatorland. Taylor, thank you for bringing this soundbite to my attention. It somehow escaped the algorithm for me on my Twitter timeline last night.
It only made mine because of Graham Marsh, so
of course
I'm glad.
It did.
Thank you, Graham.
Of course it did. Gator fans, this is where you perk your ears up after trying to tune out listening to Florida State, Georgia Tech content. Thank you again to Miles Garrett of Fox 5 Atlanta for joining us. Tim Brando, Fox Sports, frequent guest of Into the Night with Rick Ballou on Friday nights during the fall, had this to say about Florida football fans. And hold on, we're going to stand by a couple more technical difficulties. That's all right. But yes, basically, moral of the story, I will surmise for you while Dylan Denmark cues up that quote from Tim Brando as he joined, it was the 3C's podcast or something like that?
Crane and Company with Jake.
There we
Crane
go, Crane and Company. There we go, Crane and Company. Crane and Company. Florida is a program that you first thought of Spurrier, then you thought of Urban, and then what were they when those two guys weren't there? We'll listen to the rest of the quote here in a second. But Tim Brando, in summation, basically goes on to say, Taylor, that Florida fans, his words, not mine, are so toxic and delusional that they don't understand the context of where they fall in the SEC hierarchy. And thus, because of that, they have unrealistic expectations for Billy Napier. Here is that soundbite from Tim Brando.
Spurrier as a player had some moments. Yeah, he and Carlos Alvarez way back when I was a kid. But that was a program that, you first thought of Spurrier, then you thought Urban, and then what have they been when those two guys weren't there? And yet the Florida people believe, hell, we're Alabama. We're as good as them. We're Michigan. No, you're not. No, and you haven't been. And fans don't like hearing that, but I really don't care at this stage of my life who I feel soft when it comes to fan bases. Florida is without question the program within the SEC that has a fan base that doesn't understand or have any context of their history. And to me, history always impacts currency. All right. And the currency of the Florida program is one of transformation with a coach who's trying to do it a way to lay a foundation for long-term success. And that fan base is not built for anything long-term.
We've already riled up the masses on the text line designed by Lifetime Enclosures. We didn't even finish playing the full bite from Tim Brando. And already we have some of the Keeligans that are defending the Gators and why Gator fans are not toxic, why they are not unrealistic with the expectations that they have set forth, that there is more of a history, Taylor Dahl, besides Steve Spurrier and Urban Meyer in Gainesville.
Yeah, I've seen two sides of this because I went and I started reading all the comments because I knew this was going to be a wild take. And most people, that's what they were saying. This is wild.
I think it's fantastic personally.
Me too,
but
multiple things to me that I took out of this. One I'll get to in a second. But first, when we're talking about just the situation of where he's saying, if you take away these the two best coaches that Florida has ever had, they're not a team that is really worth talking about when it comes to the football sense. Most people are saying, well, yeah, you do that to almost any college football team. You take their best college football coach or their best two college football coaches during that time, and the things probably pretty drastically change. But then some people were also making the argument that there were teams like Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, LSU who were winning the SEC even if you plucked away their number one coach that you've talked about for years. And that's where this conversation comes into me. But the interesting thing to me, Mia, is I know a lot of people were taking that part of it, and I get it because I was a Florida fan. I'd probably be focused on that side too. The part that stuck to me more was more of the fan base being toxic, but it seemed like he was just alluding to they're impatient. And it's pointing to this offseason because he goes on to talk about how he likes Billy Napier and why he likes Napier. And the whole conversation this offseason, and we've talked to every Florida person we've talked to, is Billy Napier on the hot seat? Is it too soon for him to be on the hot seat? Are Florida freaking out too soon? Were they left in too much of a mess to pull the plug on Billy Napier this soon? And there's a lot of Florida fans who are, even last year, were already in that ranks of, okay, give up, move on. And I think his point was more so they're not patient enough to let kind of things play out sometimes. So it ends up turning into you get these two great coaches that you nailed on, which is great. The Urban Meyer situation, he left. He probably would have had a heart attack if he stayed. Dylan Denmark said that comment to me later. He probably would have had a heart attack if he would have stayed at Florida, that with everyone getting arrested and everything that was going on there. But I think when you look at the Florida team in general right now and what Billy Napier had to kind of dig them out of when it comes to the recruiting, when it comes to the portal, when it comes to certain things that he's just alluding to, you've got to be a little patient sometimes. You can't just count on having one of the best head coaches in college football to lead you through and win. You have to be able to sometimes do that without that guy.
Players
like
make
other
plays.
teams that. Yes.
Players make plays. Johnnies and Joes, not X's and O's.
Which coaches are a big part of it. We're talking about Nick Saban and Bear Bryant, for example. I mean, they're how many years of time do they have at Alabama and how much winning has contributed to those two? But I think
I once tried to rattle off all the previous Alabama coaches besides those two, and I was mercilessly critiqued by the show that follows us. So I'm going to refrain from going through Alabama's. I'm going to refrain from going through Alabama's history, and instead I'm going to try to give some context, since apparently that's what Florida fans are lacking is context, according to Tim Brando. 868 wants to know why he used the word toxic, and I think he's using the word toxic because, to your point, Taylor, he believes in the process. He says, you know what? You need to give Billy Napier time. He needs to recruit. He needs to get his own guys in. his scheme, his vision for this program, his thousands of analysts, and that's the only way that there is a path forward. I think the issue with Tim Brando and Billy Napier's way of thinking is that you look across the college football landscape and no one else is doing it that way because that way is outdated.
Yeah.
And that is where the critique by Brando comes in, because he thinks that fans are irrational by not following this tried and true, stay the process, look at what multiple coaches have done before. But it's 2024. That's the problem. I just don't believe that you can follow that trajectory in 2024.
Yeah, I do think there's a sense of impatience, but I think that is college football wide. That is football wide. Let's just say even to the NFL. We talked recently about how quickly they pull the plug on quarterbacks without giving them a chance. And so it's just such an interesting topic to call out Florida directly for it, because I think you could include Florida fans in that conversation. I do think you can include Florida, but I also think you have to expand that to college football fans, because college football fans are impatient. How much time is Kalen DeBoer getting in Alabama?
I mean, 2 years, 3 years?
Do you think they're not going to be talking in 2 years?
But here's the thing. 2 or 3 years, but here's the thing.
If they're winning 7-8 games there the next couple seasons, you don't think they're having a conversation already about Kalen DeBoer?
He'll get to year 3. He'll get to year 3 if he wins 8 games the next 2 years, because that's a winning record. That's getting to bowl games. If he goes 8-4 again, or doesn't make the playoff in any of those years, because I'm not sure Alabama's schedule now with a 12-team playoff, if they could find a way into a at-large bid. But if we get to year 3 and he's still stuck on the 8-win plateau, that's where there's a conversation. But at the end of the day, he's making bowl games in that situation, and he's winning in that scenario. I think that, and I'm going to read this one tweet that was sent to us on the text line designed by Lifetime Enclosures. Florida might be the only fan base that could be gaslighted and labeled as toxic after a coach goes 7-14 against Power 5 teams in his first 2 years. He'd be gone at any other top SEC school. I'm pretty sure Clark Lee just went 7-14 or something in that realm at Vanderbilt. And I understand the expectations are different at Vanderbilt. Sam Pittman, a year after a reclamation project, somehow able to win a bowl game despite barely having enough players rostered. Arkansas took a step back. He's still the head coach heading into this season. And so I don't think it's a matter of, well, every other SEC school wouldn't have stood for this. Eli Drinkwitz was on the hot seat after being the head coach, after struggling against much of the conference for his first 2-3 years as the head coach. And then he had that breakout season a year ago that changed the trajectory, assumingly, of where he stands with Mizzou. But what are the programs I just listed off, Taylor?
A Vandy.
Arkansas,
a Mizzou.
Is that where Florida is?
And that's where I think this conversation sprang from. Where are they in the list of SEC teams? Are they closer to those teams, or are they closer to Georgia, Alabama?
Let's continue the conversation.
Yes, because I want to get Dylan's remarks on this too, being a Gator.
We got to get to my MyBookie picks as well. A little WNBA chatter too. You are listening to Helmets and Heels on 1010XL and 92.5 FM.
It's Helmets and Heels, Kingfish Pest Control Wednesday. Helmets and Heels. This hour is brought to you by First Coast Honda Dealers.
They came together as a team.
Joe Cowart.
Are you like me?
Matt Hayes.
Let's keep this between us.
And Leon Searcy.
Bring it in.
XL Prime Time.
Call for one and one for all.
Yeah! 2 to 4 weekdays on 1010XL.
Hey Jacksonville, Taylor Dahl here from Helmets and Heels. If you are looking to grow your career, Chick-fil-A restaurants are hiring and looking for folks to join their team right now. Chick-fil-A Jacksonville area restaurants are offering flexible hours, scholarship opportunities, and leadership development, just to name a few. You can find a friendly work environment with competitive pay and have fun at work with opportunities to serve your community. With locations all around Jacksonville, apply online or in person today at your local Chick-fil-A restaurant.
Southeast Orthopedic Specialist is now offering ortho walk-in appointments. If you have an immediate need for orthopedic care, contact Southeast Orthopedic Specialist immediately. Avoid ERs and urgent care waiting rooms. For more information, go to se-ortho.com.
Relieve pain and get back to life. SOS. Southeast Orthopedic Specialists.
Ready to drive away with a fortune? Join us at Best Bet St. Augustine for our Fairways to Fortune giveaway. Over $30,000 in prizes are up for grabs, including a top-of-the-line 6-seater golf cart. Join us July 27th at Best Bet St. Augustine for the big giveaway and hourly cash drawings. Come play and win big at Best Bet St. Augustine, located on State Road 207, seconds away from the I-95 exit. Visit bestbetjax.com for details. That's bestbetjax.com, and we'll see you in St. Augustine.
Need protection? Call Craig and Christine Kaprosky at Goosehead Insurance. The Kaproskys are a husband-wife team committed to finding you the right coverage at the right price in just a few short minutes. For home, auto, flood, or specialty insurance, Craig and Christine Kaprosky are the answer. Craig.Kaprosky at Goosehead.com.
Hey folks, this is Mike Dempsey with a message from Paige and her entire Awaken 180 team. They want to wish all of our 1010XL listeners a happy and healthy Independence Day week. Having a party? Find your free recipes at Awaken 180 on all social media channels.
Clearwater. John, I can't even mow my side yard. It's so soggy. Man, my builder sucks.
Brent, calm down. This is a common problem in neighborhoods where houses are built too close together. You need gutters and a properly installed French drain that will soak up subsurface water. We can completely dry it up.
So I can take my builder off my speed dial now, huh?
Yeah, we got you, buddy. Let that builder bitterness go.
Clearwater irrigation and drainage too.
Give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach a man to fish. And he's listening to the Nimnicht Outdoor Show.
With tips and stories.
Presented by Duck Rooter Plumbing, Septic and Air Conditioning.
Every Saturday morning, 7 to 10.
On 1010XL.
Ackerman Cancer Center's Total Body MRI is the latest technology in early detection. This comprehensive imaging goes beyond regular scans, providing a holistic view of your health in one 60-minute scan. Schedule your Total Body MRI at AckermanCancerCenter.com.
Hey, David here with Royal Pest Services. Men, are you struggling in the bedroom? Do spiders and roaches have you scared? Visit RoyalPestServices.com and let us help you get that man card back. Guaranteed results on our first visit.
Your cooling system isn't working. Maybe somebody showed up with a portable electronic device. Then they discussed with you what your options are. Maybe they gave you an estimate that seems like an awful lot of money. What's the smart thing to do? When the situation merits a second opinion, get a Mike Merritt opinion. Yes, the Mike Merritt Comfort Team shows up with hand tools. We've never been able to fix an air conditioning problem with a tablet. Mike Merritt has been the trusted name for more than 30 years because there's never any hocus pocus. The Merritt team will walk you through the diagnostic steps up close and personal and show you exactly what you need. And the Mike Merritt price is likely to be far less because there's never an overtime charge, and the Merritt team doesn't work on commission. So remember, when it comes to the health of your cooling system, a second opinion can only help, and a Mike Merritt opinion can save you money. Florida license CACO 50384.
It's the coolest week to save during the summer fan sale at First Coast Lighting and Fans. Buy one fan, save 10%. Buy two, save 15%. Buy three or more and save 20% off all fans at First Coast Lighting and Fans. Showroom near the Avenues.
For lost or broken keys or nearly any make and model of vehicle, call 722-1111 for
Instant Keys. Instant Keys. You don't have to go to the dealer. Instant Keys comes to you.
Transmission troubles? I'm Robin Sidbury, owner of Action Transmission Specialist on Merrill Road. So come in and see how we can help solve your transmission troubles. We service all makes and models. Remember, get traction. Call Action at 744-0755.
Family owned and managed for 20 years, Hidden Hills Golf Club boasts a unique and welcoming golfing atmosphere. Visit us at hiddenhillsgc.com to book your next round on our Arnold Palmer signature course. You'll be glad you did.
Former Jaguars corner and first-year head football coach at Duval Charter School at Bay Meadows, K-12, Aaron Beasley here. Are you looking for an A-rated K-12 school prioritizing academics, arts, and athletics? Duval Charter School at Bay Meadows offers a rigorous curriculum to develop strong minds with an additional focus on growing good hearts. DCSB has been an A school for 8 years, and our tuition is free. Now enrolling. Apply at baymeadowscharter.org.
1010XL is presented by Farah & Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Protecting you and your family. Call 396-5555. Jacksonville.
You're listening to Helmets and Heels.
Illuminated by
First Coast Lighting and Fans.
On 1010XL.
I did do a little more fact-checking, Taylor Dahl. We have to continue our conversation regarding Tim Brando of Fox Sports' comments.
He was just heated.
Saying that the Florida football fan base is toxic and irrational. I went out on a limb and said, for those who say that any other SEC coach would be fired to have the record against Power 5 schools that Billy Napier does, well, Eli Drinkwitz went 5-5, 6-7, 6-7, and then 11-2 at Mizzou. So maybe that's some hope for Gator fans. Sam Pittman, 3-7, did beat LSU. Never forget in the opener of 2020. 9-4, 7-6, a step back last year, and 4-8, 11-23 overall in the SEC. He's still gainfully employed as well. Yes, sir. But yes, I am comparing Florida to Mizzou and Arkansas, although perhaps Eli Drinkwitz is the one that I should be comparing and giving you hope for Gator fans, because he did save his job last year, went 11-2 and finished second in the East behind only Georgia, and won the Cotton Bowl. Never forget.
Dylan, what was your initial take when you saw this? Which part stuck out to you?
There was no part that really stuck out. The Florida fans are, a little crazy, but this is what I go to. If you go back to 2011 when Alabama played LSU in the national title and everybody was up in arms that we needed a playoff, okay. From that point forward, Florida State's gone undefeated twice, made a playoff, should have went last year. LSU's won a national title. Georgia's done their thing. Miami was undefeated going into Thanksgiving weekend, and had they won one of those games, probably beat Pitt or Clemson in the ACC title, they would have made the playoff. And what's Florida been? And in that time frame, Florida's had 5 losing seasons in a state where you have the most NFL talent. Like, it's not like Florida's going 9-3 and 10-2 every year, and we're screaming that they're not good enough. Like, this is terrible. Florida hasn't had 3 consecutive losing seasons since my grandparents were around.
Okay, so
in the 50s or 60s.
Dylan, for you were born what, in 98? 98. Okay. So your formative years are urban, and then the Muschamp,
McElwain.
I was going to say Sharknado, but I was nice. So those are your formative years. So my question for you, as someone who has grown up around this program, do you feel that Florida is, in your eyes, they're on the level of Alabama and Georgia, or they're on the level of Mizzou, Arkansas?
They're on the level of Mizzou, Arkansas right now. It's not hard. That's not a question. That's a fact. As of the moment right now, yeah, they're not Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan. It's not even close.
So in that you believe that the impatience is understandable because there's now been this they're on that level rather than we're talking about them on the same tier as a Georgia, Alabama. They've now gone to the bottom tier, so the impatient level is understandable.
Okay, but when Napier comes in year one, and it's not good, but then you look around and USC hasn't been that good for the same time. Florida hasn't been really that good in the last 10 years or so. And USC, year one under Lincoln Riley, almost makes a playoff if it's not for Caleb Williams getting hurt in the second half of that Pac-12 playoff game. Brian Kelly wins the SEC West and beats Alabama. And Billy Napier is this offensive guy and all this and that, and he has Anthony Richardson, a top 5 pick, Osiris Torrance, and you have Ricky Pearsall, first-round receiver. Like, it's not like you're not working with nothing.
Yeah.
And you can't beat Vandy in year one. Like, I don't know, man. It's one of those, and I'm not going to say, you have to have this many wins to win a game, to keep your job this year. It all depends on how you look. Because it's your first 2 years, okay, you want to do it your way, that's fine. But year 3, you have to do something. You've got to do something this year.
I do think it also adds pressure with the expansion because the expansion's making it easier to get into the playoffs. And if you're still struggling at a team that is supposed to be, you're an SEC school, you're supposed to be on the level of Georgia, Alabama, and you can't even make a playoff expansion, then talk has to be there.
Several Heeligans say that you're the type of Gator fan they could hang out with, Dylan Denmark. Round of applause. But that leads me to ask you, Dylan, do you believe most Gator fans view this team as you do, where you say, this is where we are, and it's not good enough? And then the second part of my question would be the complacency. Do you say, you know what, 8 wins is going to be a victory for Florida? Or do you say, like, especially against the schedule this year, or do you say, no, we need to win all 12 because that's the standard is the standard?
No, I mean, I think if you win 7 games, if you win 7 games this year, I think that's pretty good. That's just for me. But I think for most fans, I think they believe that Florida's a top 10 program and that they should be, maybe not Alabama or Georgia right now, but they should be in that bubble right behind them. And, they shouldn't be getting blown out by Georgia every single year. We shouldn't be losing to Kentucky back-to-back years. We should be competing with LSU and beating LSU every now and then. We haven't done that since 2018. I mean, every fan base is like this in the South. We all know who they are. You have your middle-of-the-road fan base, and then you have the crazy ones. And the crazy ones all believe that, you should win every game and you should never have a down year. It's just for Florida, it's happened a lot lately. And it's all happening right around you. I mean, look at all the talent around Jacksonville, Tampa, Orlando, and then you could throw in Miami. It's not like it's hard. It's not like it's far. It's all right here. And, I mean, it is what it is.
I liked your point, too, earlier about the draftees that are from Florida. Florida's had the most selections in 6 of the past 10 drafts. So you would think that when you have that type of talent coming out of Florida, and you should win that over Georgia. You should be getting those guys over Georgia.
Well, and I mean, if you look at Alabama, if you look at the roster the last 6 years, you can almost count half those guys are from the city of Miami alone. So I mean, you can't blame those kids though, because this is the biggest perception with adults. I would say over 35, 40 years old is that. Okay, so for example, the Mandarin safety Stubbs, he's going to make a decision tomorrow if he's going to play for Florida or Miami. That kid was born in 2006. And I have news for you. He does not care anything about what happened before 2012. So his time frame of what he thinks or what he cares about is very short. He doesn't care about what Florida did in the 80s and the 90s and how terrible they were in the 70s. And that's what a lot of fans look at.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
It's true. I mean,
we've had that conversation around draft time, Mia, when we went in depth about the relevancy and how things have shifted because these kids now, especially in the world of social media, everything is so, okay, let me watch this 2-minute video. Let me know what's the most recent thing to happen. They don't care what your school did in the 80s. They don't care what your school did in the 90s. Right now, it's the team, and it's going to continue that way until some way it flips. And we've seen that school. Georgia did it. Georgia won in the 80s, then didn't win again for 30 years or whatever it was, and then now have been what Georgia has been. Florida has to find their way back there, or this is just going to get worse.
It's going to be Nebraska. There's one more school you could put yourself in the same category as Florida. Without further ado, Dylan, let's kick it over to this week's MyBookie picks.
Now, Mia's midday MyBookie picks. Experience the Vegas thrill from the comfort of your phone anytime, anywhere, only with MyBookie.
All right, we're going to get to some fun ones ahead of the 4th of July holiday tomorrow. But first, a little shout out to, of course, our friend Caitlin Clark. A loss last night to the Las Vegas Aces, but it was competitive, Taylor. They had it within 5 points in the third quarter, and I said, well, this is better when they got blown out by 35 to this team on opening night, so I'll take it. They are off until later this weekend. I do have the Phoenix Mercury covering a 4.5-point spread over the Dallas Wings on MyBookie today. If you can believe it, the Dallas Wings, despite having the presumably runner-up for MVP in the W this year, and Enrique Agumbawale, the Notre Dame grad, they only have 4 wins this year. I think that's kind of flown under the radar. Everyone's been so outspoken about Enrique should have made the team, Team USA. If Caitlin, didn't make it, she should have made it too. Her team has 4 wins. So, picking Diana Taurasi and company to bounce back tonight against the Dallas Wings. Here's the fun one. Don't turn that dial just because I started talking about the WNBA, folks. We have the odds on MyBookie for the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest sans Joey Chestnut. Because we have no Joey. Here are the odds. Your favorite, Jeffrey Esper at -110. 49-year-old from Oxford, Massachusetts. He already has a host of records, including eating 83 slices of pizza in 10 minutes. He also ate 281 Hooters chicken wings in September of 2019. So he's your favorite at -110. James Webb, the next best odds at +220. Aussie, 35 years old. He is the first Australian to compete in the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. He consumed 41 when he participated for the first time in 2022. He finished behind Esper and Joey Chestnut. He improved last year with 47 dogs. He also, once upon a time, ate 70 glazed donuts in 8 minutes. That was last month. And finally, I'll give you one more. A local guy from Tampa, Nick Wayrie, who's 34 years old. His competitive eating runs in the family. You may remember the women's champion, Mikai Sudo. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Who won 9 yellow mustard belts once upon a time at the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest in the women's division. He is also a bodybuilder and competitive eater. He finished 10th back in 2018. He ate 31 hot dogs without training. He improved to third with 44 hot dogs in 21, fourth in 22, and fourth last year. Logic suggests you take the favorite in this one. I know it's an unprecedented field. The fact that, we know, if you don't have, Joey.
No Joey.
How am I supposed to pick it? So there's your primer, folks. Those are the 3 favorites. Esper did finish in second the last few years since Kobayashi ultimately has retired or bowed out, or at least hasn't been seen in Coney Island in quite some time. So I would go at -110 for my bookie, midweek picks. But I don't know. I kind of want to root for the Tampa guy with the eating, running in the family, and also he's not even training, and he's out here eating.
He's just eating that many hot dogs.
He's eating 31 hot dogs without any training. So, but yes, I know you'll all be locked in tomorrow at noon, and make sure you're locked in on mybookie.ag as well. Get involved not only in the sports book, but also that live casino. We'll wrap it up and make the turn from home coming up next on Helmets and Heels.
It's Helmets and Heels, Kingfish Pest Control Wednesday. Proud partner of the Jacksonville Jaguars.
This is Helmets and Heels.
This hour is brought to you by First Coast Honda Dealers. Proud to be living in the USA. Have a star-spangled 4th from 1010XL, Jacksonville Sports Radio. Happy birthday, America.
God bless the USA.
By now, we all know the phrase, go big or go home, right? Well, my friends at Arlington Toyota are taking that phrase to heart with the Big One sales event. Yup, it's back, and it's going on now at Arlington Toyota. Mia here, and during the Big One sales event, you're going to save so big, you'll be driving home a brand new Toyota in no time. Arlington has over 400 new Toyotas available. Cars, trucks, SUVs, family vans. Guess you could say you're going big and going home in style. Plus, with every new purchase at Arlington, you get their lifetime warranty. That's unlimited time and miles. If you're wondering if now's the time to buy, let me put it this way, folks. This is a sale so big, it can only go by one name. The Big One sales event. So yeah, I say go big and save big at Arlington Toyota today. And don't forget about that 30-day exchange program too. A sale this big won't last long. Stop by and shop today. 10939 Atlantic Boulevard and online anytime at arlingtontoyota.com.
Let's fire up the flavor and ignite those appetites. Let's slow down and smell the barbecue. Because all your favorites are smoked for hours and ready for eating when you are. From our famous ribs to slow smoked pork. Enjoy some perfection by the plateful, safely in our dining room or in the comfort of your home. With curbside pickup, drive-through, and delivery. Sonny's Barbecue, local pitmasters since '68.
Hey Jacksonville, I'm sure by now you've seen our bright green GFL trucks and containers throughout the greater Jacksonville area. We are an industry leader in solid waste and would love the opportunity to earn your business. We are committed to customer service, reliability, and have unwavering focus on safety. Whether commercial or construction, let us haul your waste away. Call 904-760-5880 to get a quote today. GFL, green for life.
Mia here, and we've all been there before. A weekend trip to the casino? Canceled because real life came calling. MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your own home. The live casino is so easy to use. Just go to MyBookie and click Live Casino at the top. You'll find live dealers ready to deal or spin just like you're at the casino. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action's in the palm of your hands and you don't even need to wear pants. Start at MyBookie today with a generous sign-up bonus using promo code 1010XL. A revamped loyalty program ensures a host of exclusive VIP perks. Sign up and hit the casino with promo code 1010XL. The more you play, the more you win, only with MyBookie.
Are you 18 years or older, just got married, just got divorced, or have children? Listen up. Have you done your last will and estate planning? You have questions? Call Matt Hinson with the Hinson Law Firm. Reach him at 527-1700, offices Jacksonville, Florida. And don't let the state decide your fate.
Hey, it's Matt Hayes, and I have exciting news from Leonard Truck Outfitters, now with 2 great locations to get that truck hooked up. Beach Boulevard just past Southside and one on Blanding. I got my truck taken care of, and you should too. Leonard Truck Outfitters, your truck, your style.
See the world through the eyes of a linebacker.
I tell it like I see it, and I see it like a middle linebacker.
Tom McManus joins Jaguars Today every Friday morning. Period. Brought to you by Renewal by Anderson Windows and Doors on 1010XL.
AC replacement? If your AC unit is ready to go kaput, then it's time to call Florida Home AC. With over $3,000 in tax credits waiting for you on select systems, take advantage of it. Call 777-4300. Get Florida Home AC to cool you off.
What's more American than grilling out for the 4th of July? Check out southernsteerbutcher.com or our social media channels for all of our 4th of July specials running June 29th through July 7th.
For tasty tips and juicy breasts, choose Southern Steer Butcher.
Give your engine the attention it deserves with the advanced formulation of Napa Full Synthetic Engine Oil. It delivers faster oil flow for superior temperature protection in the harshest conditions. Defends against sludge and buildup while keeping your engine running cleaner, longer. And improves fuel efficiency by reducing friction, helping you stay at peak performance mile after mile. Try Napa Full Synthetic Engine Oil today. Available now at Napa locations nationwide.
If you're a veteran, listen up. Did you know that you can access up to 100% of your home's equity right now? Hey, Prosser here. You can do it with Loan Pronto's VA Equity Advantage program. You can get 30, 50, 100 grand or more and use that money to pay off all those credit cards, personal loans, car loans, or maybe use the cash to do that home improvement project. Veterans love working with Loan Pronto because they make it easy. No junk fees, no hassle. They can unlock that cash in your home's equity in a matter of weeks. Don't keep paying insane rates on credit cards. There's a smarter alternative with Loan Pronto. Get more info and start the process now at loanpronto.com. Or if your current VA loan rate is over 6.5%, Loan Pronto can get you in a streamlined refinance with a lower rate right now with no income verification and no appraisal. Lower your monthly payment big time. Loan Pronto makes it so easy for veterans. So call now, 904-999-1508. That's 904-999-1508. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1666171, subject to lender approval.
1010XL is presented by Farah and Farah, exclusive injury law firm of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Protecting you and your family. Call 396-5555. Jacksonville. Now, the cool down from the cool guys at Donovan Air Electric and Plumbing. Fast, reliable, and honest service since '87.
Let's begin by paying off today's question of the day. Who will have the most receiving yards for your Jacksonville Jaguars in 2024? And with 70.3% of the vote, Christian Kirk is who the people have spoken. Over 180 votes cast thus far. Brian Thomas Jr. with 16.2% of the votes. Evan Ingram, 8.6%. And Gabe Davis, 4.9%. I can't say I'm surprised, Taylor.
Yeah, me either.
If last year taught us anything, one card is taken from the house of cards and it collapses just like that. Hopefully that's not the way the Jaguars offense is structured in 2024.
Yes, and so going to that, my takeaway for today is going to be in that conversation we had earlier about how you fix the offense and some of the weird, wonky things that were happening offensively last season. If you missed my stats, I'll go through them real quick. Third most passing yards taken away by pass interference last season. Most touchdowns taken away by pass interference last season. 4. The next closest team had 2. Averaged 1.8 giveaways per game, 1 fumble per game that they lost. Almost 2 giveaways per game where the Jags were averaging last season. They had the third most passes broken up in the end zone. They were not reliable whatsoever when you were having to kick outside of the 50, a field goal outside of the 50. They were 25th in that. And so pretty much it was like, hey, get to the 30 or you're not going to score. They had the highest number of stuffed runs behind the line of scrimmage. Wide receivers were dead last in yards after contact per reception. And then the rushing defense was 30th. The rushing offense was 30th in the league. All of these things combined, which I think a lot of them we can factor into, we mentioned this, injury, the offensive line. And so my takeaway today is going to be that I think / I hope that Eric Armstead and Mitch Morse are enough for each of those trenches sides to be fixed in the level that the scheme now fixed. We talked a lot about that inside zone and the duo when it comes to the run game and how it didn't work because they didn't have the manpower to do it. I do think that these additions are guys, especially being veterans being on winning football teams, also just being those more rough and rugged type of offensive line that
veterans being a physical veteran offensive line.
I think that those will factor in majorly to what the offense can be able to do this season, especially once we're talking about those red zone situations and the third and short situations, which were massively a major part of what killed the Jags offense last season.
It'll be curious to see. Good thing we've got a couple more weeks before training camp kicks off for us to continue to debate it. We will not be debating that tomorrow, though. A reminder that all of our programming, local programming here at 1010XL, off tomorrow for the 4th of July holiday. Don't be alarmed when you turn on 1010XL and you will hear national CBS programming. We will be back on Friday. Well, I should say Lauren will be back on Friday. Taylor will be off on vacay. I will be holding down the fort, as will Dylan Denmark. Our thanks to Myles Garrett of Fox 5 in Atlanta for joining us talking Georgia Tech. We will continue our Scouting the Opposition series for both Florida State and Florida on Friday. That does it for us. XL Primetime comes up next. We will catch you on Friday.
Helmets and Heels.
Kingfish